You know, the strange thing about getting older as a Gen X is you get to reflect on your childhood and all the things, all the dreams that you had as a child, all the things that you identified with as a child and throughout school, and how much of that has carried on into your adult life. And I think part of it, you know, a part of you always feels like that kid from high school. And a lot of us still carry a lot of the identities that were forged upon us in grade school and high school. For example, the one that didn't fit in, or the one student who stayed in the background. Perhaps you were a jock, perhaps you were a prom queen or prom king. Who knows? But the question is, what if that version that you had in high school is still shaping your life today? I think back to high school, actually going back to even the time I went to grade school, how these roles get, placed on us at a young age. And we assume for a lot of us that those roles are true. You know, am I popular? Am I an outsider? Am I a geek? Am I a jock? Am I the quiet one, the loner? All these things, that we wrestle as kids. And I remember being a kid before grade school, just being one of the few Chinese kids living in a Caucasian area. We just played with other kids. They didn't see black, white, Asian. They were just kids playing. And then somehow, when you get to grade school, you get slotted into these hierarchies. So we didn't leave high school with just memories. We left with identities. And many of them, these identities, still continue to play a role in determining a lot of our life decisions. As I was going through video comments the other day about the 80s nostalgia video I made earlier, I saw some comments about how they hated the 80s because high school was a horrible experience for them. And for me, high school wasn't that great of experience. It was kind of actually pretty mediocre and very uneventful because I was working to help support my family, and also I just didn't feel like I belonged. I mean, I was an Asian kid in a predominantly Caucasian area, and I didn't feel that they understood me, and also I didn't feel like I was always considered an equal, right? Good enough for a Chinese, quote unquote Chinese guy, but not on the same level as them. And so I kind of harbored this feeling of a sense of not feeling that I was part of any group. So I spent a lot of time just basically doing what I wanted to do, and that was okay. I think at the time, you feel kind of left out, and you would like to be a part of these things, but it is what it is. And I carried that with me and internalized a lot of that of feeling not the sense of not being, I guess, good enough, right? Because when you go through something like that, in high school, elementary school, all these things. I mean, the world seems so small. That's your world, and you don't realize that it's such a small part of your life, and it's such a huge world out there to explore. And I try to tell the kids that I teach now, who are in high school or in elementary, not to let these things define you, because that's not who you're going to be. And about a few years ago, 2023, I was invited to my 36-year grad reunion. And I haven't been there back in that city for, to see those people since 1987. So it was a long time ago. And I didn't feel a strong connection to people from high school, but there was a few that I wanted to see because I just thought they were just genuinely nice people from what I remember about them. And, I had a few friends that I haven't seen since then as well. And, I thought it would be pretty cool to catch up with them after all these decades. So I start to observe when, the people that were coming, and I said, you know what, I'm going to observe, just from sit back and just be open about everything because, as adults, I mean, and now, I mean, I can talk to anybody in a room and I can make friendships anywhere within, a few seconds. Uh, what surprised me the most when I went to the reunion was how people just naturally went back to their cliques that they had in high school. And once again, the same group dynamics. The groups were separated again. People not mixing. So you had the people who were quote unquote the popular group in high school talking to one another, and then you had another group of people who weren't so popular. They stuck together, and here I was just kind of sitting back at a table, just okay. Whoever wants to chat, I'm here. And I was sitting there with my wife because my wife came along because she was curious as well, and it really felt like high school never ended again. But everyone was older. They were, a lot of them I didn't even recognize because they've gotten so gray. But it was just a weird feeling for me. It was anyway, just being away from the city for such a long time. And of course, there's one guy that comes in and he, just acting like a hotshot, like he was the biggest thing since sliced bread, and he thought he was just the most successful person in the world. And I just thought to myself, dude, why don't you humble yourself? Because it was not like he was ultra successful. I mean, he did okay, but he worked a normal job, right? It wasn't like he owned like multiple businesses and stuff like that. But I got a good chuckle out of it. I came up and said hi, and he just kind of just like, and walked by, right? And then, I met a guy who I remembered. I mean, I didn't recognize him. He came up to me and introduced himself, and I thought, wow, it was good to see him. I remember him being a bully in high school and used to intimidate a lot of people. But he really changed. He became more spiritual individual, and I had a chance to talk to him for a while, and that was pretty cool too. And he was such a nice guy. He came up to me and just, well, wow, you're in phenomenal shape, right? You look great. And so I said, yeah, you do too, right? So I reconnected with a lot of good people, and heard about people who were supposed to be have everything going for them and made some bad choices in life, and life didn't treat them very well. I had one guy who I was hoping to see. Actually, he used to make all these racist remarks to me when I was in school, all the way from grade school to high school, and I heard he's almost like he's homeless, right? And of course he didn't show up, and of course there's the mean girl in high school that I thought would show up, and she didn't. And I heard some things about her that she didn't turn out as great as she thought she was, right? And so it was kind of interesting because I think a lot of people go to high school just to reconnect, but there's a lot of people that go there just to show off as well, right? But I thought it was pretty interesting just being a neutral observer. And what I noticed when I left there is that would I go to another one? I probably wouldn't if it was the same people again. But if the people I want to see that are going to go, I'd probably go because they're probably the last time I see them again, because we're all getting up there. And the one thing I noticed is when I moved away, and I realized this about myself after, even before the reunion, was, I found a new identity. as I moved to a bigger city. So the person I became when I moved away is totally different than the person I was back in high school. Maybe that's the reason why some people, felt uh, felt a little bit uneasy talking to me. Um, because I wasn't this person. I just came up to people and just say, "Hey, how you doing? How things going? How's your family and so forth." But uh, martial arts, business, and all that stuff that you know built my life in the new city, gave me such confidence, and I feel like I can talk to anybody. So I realized that I wasn't the same person anymore. But um, going back, you realize that a lot of these people held on to these identities that they forged in high school. So some people, we they don't let go of that, and we all leave high school physically, but mentally, we really, a lot of us don't, and so we assume these old roles. We start comparing. We start limiting ourselves as adults, and you don't believe that, hey, I can do all these great things, and that's not the person I am in high school. And that's the one thing I recognize when I moved away to a big city. Was it was a brand new slate to become who I always want to become. And so I recognize the old identity, um, and I think it's important for people that are struggling with this, because I read in a lot of comments that people were still seem to be struggling with their identities, because high school was horrible for them, or maybe they grew up poor. They grew up in a dysfunctional family, and it still affects them to this day. I could read from the comments, that life for them is still not the greatest. And I think it's important to ask yourself, who you think you were back then, and question it. Um, because the identity was formed in a very specific environment and in a very small window of your life. And so I think the biggest thing is to think about what's holding you back today from living the life you want, to reinventing yourself, and just being really happy. Because for me, I thought to myself, I'm not going to let a bunch of people from high school determine my worth on this planet. I mean, screw that, And that's the attitude I took at 20, because I had these big dreams when I was a little kid. Ever since I was little, I loved Bruce Lee. He was my hero, and I always wanted to be like him, right? I want to be a martial artist, and do all these wonderful things. But when I went to high school, there were people like saying, "Oh no, a Chinese guy can never be this," right? And I thought, well, okay, well, maybe that's is that really true? Because for a while there, I thought, okay, maybe it is. But my father used to say to me, "Hey, why don't you stop being a banana? Yellow on the outside, white on the inside." Uh, and no, I mean, sorry, I mixed that up. White on the outside, yellow on the inside. And I said to my dad, it's not because I want to be the white, it's because I want to be treated as an equal. And that is, but it was a tough time to be caught in two cultures, right? I wanted to be, part of the North American culture, but at the same time, they wanted me to remember my Chinese roots as well. So I'm hoping that those of you who are still struggling with your identity and still holding on to what high school has pigeoned you into, that you think back to how it's affecting you today. And it doesn't matter if you're 50, it's not too late to reinvent yourself and do something to fulfill what your destiny is in life, right? And I hope that message resonates with you. And yeah, feel free to comment. What do you think? Have you gone back to your high school reunion? And how did you feel about going to it? Did it? And have you please share a story about whether you reinvented yourself after high school, and how's that turned into a positive for you? All right, I'd love to hear your comments, and if you like my content, feel free to like, share, okay, or subscribe, and we'll talk to you next time. See you in the next video. Take care.